resources for crime scene.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, like on this case, your SOPs say, since it's a critical police incident, the crime scene sergeant, if they're not on duty, they're waking them up.
Yes, sir.
The chief of police has been woken up. There was a lot of rank out there when you got to the scene. Would you agree with that?
I don't recall.
Was Valdera still in this crime scene field training officer program, or was he out because Bain was with him?
I believe he was still in field training, sir.
Did Valdera start behind you in the unit?
Yes, sir.
Once you got your briefing, you're able to ask whoever's giving you the briefing for what you're supposed to do additional information, correct?
Yes, sir.
During your period of time, was Lee your training officer when you were in the field, or did you have multiples for a crime scene?
Multiple, but Officer Lee was not my training officer at any point.
For all the multiple officers you had, you're welcome to ask them questions at any time if you need additional help.
Yes, sir.
And if they see you doing something wrong, they politely pull you aside and say, hey, what about this?
Correct, sir.
They're challenging you because you want the best evidence before the finders of fact. You'd agree with that?
Yes, sir.
When you walked up, you have to make, crime scene, you have to make an initial scene assessment on any scene to see if it's safe for you to be in the facility, the property, what have you, correct?
Yes, sir.
On your initial scene assessment, you came up in the early morning hours when it was still dark.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell from walking up to the residence whether the residence had a rear entry door?
No, sir.
Could you tell if it had a gate that opened up into the back property, if there was an alley from walking up from the addressable or the street side, the front side?
No, sir, I could not.
So whether or not there's signs of forced entry on the two doors up front, if you're supposed to secure and observe if there's forced entry around the building, somebody still has to go to the back to check on a call for an open structure. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Prosecutor asked you if you could see a window when you got to the gate. Do we know what height your camera was at and what its field of view is on the lens? Because it's got a pretty wide angle, does it not?
It can, yes, sir.
You know what the angle was set at to be able to see that window standing outside and what the distance was from the gate when you had that image?
So the photograph I did not collect, but for the scan, no, sir, I do not know.
So we don't know. You know how tall Officer Dean is?
No, sir.
You know how tall his body camera was at the time, where it was mounted on his body?
No, sir.
You had an occasion to spend a lot of hours inside the scene, because that takes a while to scan, does it not?
Yes, sir.
Did we have any malfunctions with the scans? Did it behave like it was supposed to?
Yes, sir.
I noticed from looking at State's Exhibit 3 that you were able to get your tripod back into, there's a dead corner in the kitchen, an L-shaped corner in the kitchen back to the right of the stove if you're looking at the stove. You were able to get your scanner all the way back there, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Any issues with anybody taking any photos from that area then? They would be able to get back there. If you could get the tripod back there, they could get back there.
Yes, sir.
In your field, is there, because you're trained on a bunch of stuff in crime scene, not just working on residential or a structure, you're taught that if it happens, you have to handle it.
Yes, sir.
You got to figure out a way to process it, whether it's a dumpster or whether it's a structure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a term of art in crime scene called layering an area or a room?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to the members of the jury what it is to layer? There's many ways to do it in a field where you grid it off with string and stakes and you work sections, but for a room, let's focus on layering just for a room. Can you explain that to the members of a jury?
So my understanding is when layering a room, you observe it, document it as is, and then you can start becoming more intrusive into different parts of the room, opening cabinets, refrigerators, things like that, looking in, because you've already documented the original state of those objects. Once you've documented original states, you can move objects to see what's underneath them, like couch cushions or full pieces of furniture. Additionally, you can section off certain parts of the room and deal with those at each time to basically compartmentalize the scene make it easier to process and easier to understand at a later date.
And for the jury's benefit, there, at some point on a homicide, a Tarrant County Medical Examiner District death investigator has to arrive to take possession of the deceased. Is that correct?
If they are still on scene, yes, sir.
And at the time of your scans, from what the state published on the big screen here in the courtroom, Ms. Jefferson's body was still in the room.
Yes, sir.
Were you there when the death investigator arrived?
No, sir.
You know, you mentioned couch cushions. You've seen the crime scene photos from Valderas that the couch, the sectional couch in the living room looked like it was layered. Somebody had moved the cushions in some of the photos.
I don't recall. I'd have to see the photos again, sir.
Do you know of any layering, searching of the debris, the items that was in the area, the room where the shooting took place? If anybody went through and processed more than just the area where Miss Jefferson was?
I do not know, sir.
Does your scanner have the capability of also scanning the ceiling when it's scanning?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you've watched Officer Dean's body-worn video or not, but there's audio on it. That would be typical for an Axon camera, correct?
Yes, sir.
I heard what appears to be a smoke detector going off. Was that still going off? A 1-minute chirp? Did you ever isolate or figure out when you were in the room? Because you were probably in there the longest, of where that chirp was.
I don't recall, sir.
Would your scan show us if the rooms had smoke detectors we could look at later?
It should, yes, sir.
Did you make any notes or observations? That didn't catch your attention.
No, sir. It's common.
Did you make any observations about the structure of those storm doors? Was it glass or was it screen? Or you don't know, or both?
I don't know, sir.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you, Officer. Pass the witness.
Read the record.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to say your name wrong. May he be excused subject to any potential...
No objection from the state.
Thank you very much. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're good.
Who do you have next?
State calls Detective Roloff with Fort Worth Police Department.
All right. Sure. Yes. solemnly swear or affirm testimony given this cause to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat right here. Rule of evidence is in effect says you can't be in court unless you testify. Once you have testified, don't discuss your testimony with anybody else except the lawyers, okay? Mr. Smith.
Detective, would you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I'm Detective Doug Roloff with Fort Worth Police Department.
And could you speak up just a little bit?
That was operator error on the judge.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Judge. Let's try that again. Sound check.
Detective Doug Roloff with the Fort Worth Police Department.
Detective Roloff, how long have you been with the Fort Worth Police Department?
31 years.
And what all jobs have you had in those 31 years?
I worked patrol for the first 12 years, zero tolerance part of that. Promoted to detective in 2003. Worked South CIU, which is general assignments, for 5 years. And came to major case for the last 14 years.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, sir.
What's it mean to be a certified peace officer?
Go through academy, take a state test to get certified that you follow the state required minimum requirements to become a police officer.
And what is your current duty assignment again?
Detective,
And where are you assigned?
major case.
And what is Fort Worth major case?
Major case investigates officer-involved shootings, in-custody death, kidnappings, murder for hire, high-dollar fraud, some theft cases, and anything else the chief thinks that we need to investigate.
Were you a part of the major case division back in October of 2019?
Yes, sir.
On October 12, 2019?
Yes.
And as part of that division, were you assigned to work on a officer-involved shooting involving Officer Aaron Dean?
Yes, sir.
And did you go out to the scene that night at 1203 East Allen Avenue?
Yes, I did.
How long were you out there?
10 minutes, maybe.
And then where'd you go after that?
I went to our office on Calvert Street.
The home where the shooting took place over on 1203 East Allen Avenue, is that in Fort Worth, Texas?
Yes, sir.
Tarrant County?
Yes, sir.
So why'd you go back to the office after the house?
When I arrived on the scene, I spoke with a detective Rimshus, and we found out that there was an officer-involved shooting, and there was a person inside the house that was deceased, and I knew we needed a search warrant in order to go inside that house.
Once you also went back to, where's your office again?
1000 Calvert.
1000 Calvert. After you went back to 1000 Calvert, did you ever have the opportunity to meet someone introduced to you as Officer Aaron Dean?
Yes, sir.
Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
For the record, the witness, the defendant has stood up. Is the person that stood up the person you recognize as Officer Aaron Dean?
Yes, sir.
So, for what purpose did you meet the defendant?
So,
Well, let me take that back. Did you meet the defendant as part of crime scene collecting his duty weapon that was used on October 12, 2019?
yes.
And you were present at that time?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Now, were you also present for some paperwork that was done in collecting that weapon that was fired on October 12, 2019?
Yes.
And if I may, here's a copy of that if you need it to refresh your memory. Did you cross some paperwork when you collected that firearm?
Yes.
Did you document the serial of that firearm?
Yes.
Now I'm opening up State's Exhibit 6, what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6. In that, do you see State's Exhibit 107?
Yes.
And is that the same firearm that was collected from Officer Dean in the early morning hours of October 12, 2019?
Yes.
And how do you know it's the same?
Because I have it listed as a serial number of one I collected from him.
You collected it from the defendant and it has a serial number. What is the serial number on a firearm?
It's an identification specifically given to each firearm to identify make, model, and serial number when it's made.
And so that helps you identify to say, that is the firearm that I collected from the defendant on October 12, 2019.
Yes, sir.
And as a result, did you also recover, now firearms have multiple pieces, did you also recover a magazine?
Yes.
And what is a magazine?
Magazine is what ammunition is loaded into and then loaded into the gun.
All right. And is that magazine in State Exhibit 108?
Yes.
Marked as 108, is that the magazine as part of this firearm?
Yes.
Now, were there some bullets in the magazine and the gun?
Yes.
Is the baggie marked State Exhibit 109, does that have the round that was chambered in State Exhibit 107?
I cannot say for sure.
Cannot say for sure, that's fine. And then what about State Exhibit 110?
That's ammunition also, and I don't know if that was in the gun. Crime scene did that.
Crime scene did that, okay.
Yes.
But you're for sure that State Exhibit 107 and 108 are from the defendant?
Yes.
Now, may I take State Exhibit 106 over to the defense for review?
Yes, sir.
submission of states 106 for the record only, which is the evidence box. 107, 108, 109, and 110. 109 and 110 being baggies. We don't have an objection to those 4 bags and contents for the last 2.
The state is offering 106 for the record and 107 through 110 for all purposes.
106 for the record, Your Honor, 107, 108, 109, and 110 for all purposes.
They're admitted. And 106 is for purposes of the record.
Yes, Your Honor, and for the record, 107 and State Exhibit 107, the firearm is secured with zip ties to State Exhibit 106. It has been placed in a safe manner with zip ties, making sure that it is inoperable at this time. State Exhibit 108 is secured the same way with zip ties.
Thank you.
So, Detective Roloff, State Exhibit 107, that's the gun. Is that firearm?
Yes.
Firearm's a deadly weapon.
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor. We'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Doug, good morning. How are you, Detective?
Good, sir.
You got to the scene, and then you became the person that had to go back to the office to draft the warrant, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you put some information in your warrant. You put in there that a weapon may have been displayed at a police officer. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And in the state of Texas, that's a first-degree felony to point a weapon at a peace officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
A peace officer that's in a full uniform.
Yes, sir.
So to collect evidence at a location such as that, you need a warrant to get in,
Yes, sir.
and or you could get consent, but there was nobody there that you could find to sign consent, correct?
Correct.
Based on what had taken place. So the evidence that was removed from the scene was removed under a warrant. Is that safe to say?
Yes, sir.
Prosecutor asked you about when you got to see former Officer Aaron Dean. He went to y'all's location. Is it 1000 Calvert?
Yes, sir.
Is that the old training academy on the other side of the river?
Yes, sir.
Were you present when they took who took the photos of Officer Dean and Officer Darge against the nondescript wall to show what they were wearing?
That would have been Crime Scene Officer Dumais.
And is that something that's commonplace to document for your world in major cases, exactly how the officers looked at a given time?
Yes, sir.
Done in every critical police incident, any use of force that y'all are investigating.
Yes, sir.
That wall's been used a lot.
Yes.
When you're there, the weapon that is in Dean's holster at the time of the photos, that's the weapon that was just admitted here before the jury. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Dean's issued another weapon that night, is he not?
Yes, he is.
Can you explain that to the members of the jury?
We have in officer-involved shootings, or any time a weapon is used by law enforcement. In the city of Fort Worth, we collect the gun they use so that it can be tested at the crime lab to verify shell casing projectiles on the scene and so forth. But at the same time, we do not leave our officers unarmed. We replace the gun that they have with an exact duplicate of the one we took.
At some point throughout this, the jury may not know the day, but at some point a warrant was written. This is Saturday morning. The warrant's written Monday evening, signed by Judge Wolf when he brought back to the courthouse here to sign it. Do you know about that?
Yes, sir.
Were you here at the courthouse when he signed it?
No, it wasn't.
At some point, parts of Aaron's weapon that are no longer in that box were given back to him. You know that?
Yes.
Can you explain how that happened?
So I believe his gun originally had a flashlight on it, and I think that property belonged to him. That may have happened that night, actually, because the gun I issued or had to issue him was a exact duplicate of the gun, but we don't have any of the extra stuff that he had on his gun. If it was that flashlight, if I'm correct on that. And so we take that flashlight off the gun that he turned in to put it on the gun that
he was replaced with.
After that photo against the nondescriptive wall is taken, you take his gun. At some point, somebody has to take his Axon taser camera system. Is that correct?
So the night that this occurred, and what usually happens, let me go by what happens with our critical police incidents. If they have video cameras, so forth, we have a docking station in our office. We have the officers come in, put your camera on the docking station so it can be uploaded to our server, or evidence.com, the server that controls all of our video. So that would have been placed on the docking station that night, I believe, and so that we would have access to it to review video, because we immediately restrict access to video.
Did a lieutenant, if you recall, come in and take Officer Dean's camera from him?
I do not know who did that or who loaded it on the docking station.
Do you know Lieutenant Holford?
Yeah.
Is he part of Major Case?